For 2,000 years, the Acropolis has dominated the skyline over Athens. The ravages of war, religious desecration, and cultural looting have failed to diminish its hold over our imagination. In the secrets of its ruins lie the ideals of the Golden Age of Greece, the philosophy of Socrates, the geometry of Pythagoras, the birth of democracy, and the Parthenon itself, the most influential building in Western civilization.
These are public buildings in the greatest city of its time, a city that had the power and had the wealth and had the navy and had the wherewithal and the artisans to do what they did. And when they were gathered together, they were not only competitive with each other and had to work and wanted to work together through that competitive spirit, but they were also competitive with art itself. They thought to themselves, we are as good as any artists have ever been, and we must show the world as they knew it what they could do. And there was no compromise.
The boldness and ambition of the Acropolis was funded by the spoils of war, a war that determined the fate of Greece. In 480 BC, Athens lay in ruins, conquered by the seemingly unstoppable Persian Empire. At sea, the Persian armada of 800 vessels bore down on the retreating Greek fleet, who were hopelessly outnumbered. On the night before the inevitable battle, an owl, symbol of their protective goddess Athena, was seen flying through the night sky. Inspired by this good omen, the Greek navy daringly engaged and defeated the Persian fleet at the Battle of Salamis. In one of the great naval victories of history, the Greeks sank 200 enemy ships while losing only 40 of their own. The Persian threat had been overcome. The unexpected victory heralded a new period of stability for Athens and her allies. The Golden Age of Greece was born. A permanent alliance of Aegean city-states was formed, called the Delian League, to defend Greece's newfound independence from the Persian menace. One man, Pericles of Athens, emerged as its undisputed leader. His ambition was simple: to make Athens its political and cultural capital, effectively creating the Athenian Empire. The Acropolis was to be the masterstroke of Pericles' power broking, a monumental declaration of Athens' dominance in the New World Order. In 447 BC, he committed the new empire and its wealth to its construction. He brought together three unique artistic talents: Phidias the sculptor, and architects Ictinius and Kallikrates. Together they imagined a complex of temples and public places to be built along classical ideals, but exceeding them in scale and perfection. The entrance to the Acropolis, the symbolic barrier between the secular and sacred worlds, would be through an extravagant staircase and gateway, the Propylaea. To the north, they would rebuild the Erechtheion, a temple named after Erechtheus, the ancient god-king of Athens, who the poet Homer described as being Athena's own foster child. Steeped in mythology and legend, the Erechtheion would be its most religious site, where all the deities that dominated Athenian life could be worshipped in one place. Facing the Erechtheion to the south would be the Parthenon, meaning House of the Virgin, a palace fit for their goddess Athena and an impregnable treasury for the wealth of Athens, guarded over by the goddess herself. Completing the complex would be the temple Athena Nike. Celebrating military victories, it looks out over the Bay of Salamis, the scene of their great deliverance from the Persians. Nike is the Greek word for victory. Pericles' Acropolis was to be the focal point of Athenian life. Religious processions would enter through the Propylaea and climax at the Erechtheion. On its many altars, hundreds of cattle would be sacrificed to Athena, Poseidon, and Zeus. Sporting games would augment the festivals. Grand feasts and banquets would take place on its wooded slopes, a time for young girls of marriageable age to be introduced to male society. On the broad plazas between temples, military parades would celebrate Greek power. At Athena Nike, their war dead would be honored and protection sought for those still fighting for the city. Uniquely accessible by its own staircase, Athenians could visit the temple whenever they wanted, without having to pass through the ceremonial gates of the Propylaea. Every detail of the Acropolis, its masonry, sculptures, and painted decorations were to be the finest ever created. But Pericles' power was not dictatorial. His grand aspirations for the Acropolis were not his alone to approve.
The entire building program that Pericles proposed and every individual project had to be approved by the Democratic Assembly. And to a very large degree then, the monuments on the Acropolis, though perhaps the idea of one man, Pericles, nonetheless were the work of the democracy as a whole.
Athenian democracy was developed around 500 years BC. All free men born of two Athenian parents qualified for citizenship and voting rights in the assembly. Though it empowered only a tiny minority, 40,000 men out of a population of 500,000, it was a pure democracy. Every state decision was voted on by the entire assembly. The polling system was simple. A black stone for no, a white one for yes. At first, the assembly opposed Pericles' plans for the Acropolis. The citizens simply balked at the huge cost. In response, Pericles threatened to pay for the project himself and give it his own name. With that moment of bravado, the opposition crumbled. From then on, no cost would be too great or level of endeavor too hard. The Acropolis became a symbol of Athenian civic pride, and the Parthenon its crowning glory. Only 10 years earlier, a huge temple had been built to Zeus at Olympia. Athenian honor and Pericles' ambition demanded that the Parthenon be bigger. Its foundations were to be built over the ruins of an earlier Parthenon that had been razed to the ground